Hi! There's a famous quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson in his essay Self-Reliance, 1838, where he says, "Truly speaking, it is not instruction, but provocation that I can receive from another soul." That's what this podcast is all about. I'm just trying to provoke. That's all this is. Maybe you'll find that it's true, maybe you'll reject it, whatever, but I've written a little bit on laws today, and I want us to basically debate the question of legalism and morality and justice and all that kind of stuff, because I've been thinking about it again a lot. So first, by the way, I'd like to welcome new listeners to the program. This is the Godward Show, and I'm your host, Casey. We are nearing 1,000 subscribers, and as everyone knows, that's the big leagues, everybody. The recent secret streams for patrons only have been so lit, I'm serious, that I'm tempted to try to make some trailer thing, by obscuring their voices and faces to give outsiders some understanding of how good the conversation gets twice a month. Anyway, if you're interested in participating or just gaining access to those streams to listen, check out the link in the description below. A mere $5 a month gets you 2 3-hour episodes of absolutely highbrow conversation sprinkled with comedic digressions and so on. If you're interested in that, that's your opportunity. If you're not interested, that's fine also, but if that's the case, I'd be grateful if you share the link to this podcast with a friend. And we're drinking apple cider vinegar lemon water today. Now, on the other hand, regular listeners of the Godward podcast know that I, your host, Casey, absolutely love a fine analogy, whether it's a parable or a simile or a symbol or an allegory. I really get off on that kind of stuff. So let's start with one. Ready? The other day I was watching a nature documentary with my family, and they showed some bears in the Appalachian Mountains. And the bears were looking under the stones on the side of the river there, trying to find salamanders to eat. The narrator said that North Carolina has more salamanders than any other state in the Union, or something like that, and that some of them are poisonous. And then he said, quote, "Somehow the bears know which ones to eat and which ones to avoid." So that's the end, but I do want you, or at least I'll just say, I've been thinking about that for a week since I saw it. And that's where we're going to start this episode. I won't even interpret the analogy for you yet, maybe at the end if I have time. There's a reference in Herman Melville's final story, the masterful novella Billy Budd Sailor, to one of the key figures of the French Revolution. I wanted to do a whole episode on Billy Budd. Maybe I will at some point in the future, but the theme of it, which will be the theme of this episode, is just so giant, so important, that I honestly don't feel like I can do it justice in 45 minutes if I'm also trying to be fair to Billy Budd as literature. So instead of dealing with the central question of that story while also trying to do the story itself justice, I'm just going to extract the theme. I'm going to try to arrive at a summary of the question by a different route. But just so you know, if you ever want to really push your mind to the final dimensions of the huge and perennial question that I will address by way of Plutarch in this episode, read Billy Budd. Anyway, here's the excerpt, the only one I'll read you from Melville today, which I read to you mostly here just for the pleasure of hearing some Herman Melville read aloud. It goes like this. "A somewhat remarkable instance recurs to me. In Liverpool, now half a century ago, I saw under the shadow of the great dingy street wall of Prince's Dock, an obstruction long since removed, a common sailor, so intensely black that he must needs have been a native African of the unadulterate blood of Ham, a symmetric figure, much above the average height, the two ends of a gay silk handkerchief thrown loose about his neck danced upon the displayed ebony of his chest. In his ears were big hoops of gold, and a Scotch Highland bonnet with a tartan band set off his shapely head. It was a hot noon in July, and his face, lustrous with perspiration, beamed with barbaric good humor. In jovial sallies, right and left, his white teeth flashing into, he rollicked along the center of a company of his shipmates. These were made up of such an assortment of tribes and complexions as would well have fitted them to be marched up by Anacharsis Klutz before the bar of the first assembly as representatives of the human race. Okay. I mean, what a picture Melville paints, right? So, okay, Jean-Baptiste Duval de Grasse, Baron de Klutz, better known as Anacharsis Klutz, was born to a Prussian nobleman in 1755, and he is mainly, if ever, remembered now for being the first person to suggest a one-world government, or a world parliament. He was an international anarchist and a self-described personal enemy of God. Shortly after the French Revolution began in 1789, Klutz went to Paris, the head of a group of 36 foreigners residing in France, and appeared at the bar of the National Constituent Assembly. This is what Melville is referring to. When he, Klutz, proclaimed that the entire world adhered to the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen, and this was the central document produced by the French revolutionaries, he quickly became known as the orator of mankind. He was so radical that even the very progressive Robespierre insisted on his exclusion from the Jacobin Club on the basis that he, Klutz, was a foreigner. Klutz insisted until the day he was executed by guillotine in 1794 that Paris ought to be the capital of the world. Now, for the connection to Plutarch, who will bring us to our central question. Anacharsis Klutz took his name from a 6th century BC Scythian philosopher known only as Anacharsis. The excerpt I'm about to read to you appears in Plutarch's Life of Solon, and keep in mind, Solon is the famous lawgiver of Athens. It's not very long, so I'm going to read you the full 2 paragraphs here. Quote, "Here is an account, as reported by my sources, of 2 private meetings and conversations Solon had, the first with Anacharsis, and the second with Thales. Once, on a visit to Athens, Anacharsis went to Solon's house, knocked on the door, and said, 'I'm not from here, but I've come to forge ties of friendship and hospitality with you.' Solon replied that this was something better done at home. But Anacharsis said, 'Well, you're the one at home, so why don't you forge the ties of friendship and hospitality with me?' Impressed by the man's wit, Solon made Anacharsis welcome and had him to stay for quite a while." Now this was at a time when Solon was involved in state affairs and was drafting his laws. And when Anacharsis found out that what Solon was up to, he mocked his belief that he could use mere decrees to curb his fellow citizens' injustice and rapacity. "These decrees of yours are no different from spiders' webs," he said. "They'll restrain anyone weak and insignificant who gets caught in them, but they'll be torn to shreds by people with power and wealth." Solon is supposed to have replied that people do in fact abide by their agreements when neither party gains by infringing them, and that he was tailoring his laws to his fellow citizens so as to prove to everyone that honesty is always better than criminality. In actual fact, though, the results justified Anacharsis' conjecture rather than Solon's expectations. Anacharsis also expressed astonishment, after a visit to the assembly, that in Greece the proposals are made by clever people, but the decisions are made by fools. So, okay, that's the entire bit from Plutarch. The last part is a reference to democracy, of course, but the key question here, for us at least today, is about the law in general. And if you'll accept my biased language, the real key question is about what I think of as being called legalism. We look around at the world and we observe all sorts of bad behavior, and it is so easy to think, well, let us legislate this degeneracy away. We incline to trust the law to make men good, because we have seen that we cannot trust men to be good of their own accord. By the way, given the themes we're dealing with here, it won't surprise you that there was a big international conference held in Liverpool, I guess, like coincidentally, maybe, because Melville cited him there, as recently as June of 2021 on the topic, The Legend of Anacharsis in Antiquity and Modernity. That is, these questions of the law, justice, globalism, and borders all coalesce around this figure of Anacharsis. And it is these questions I want us to address in this episode. These are all very hot topics. In fact, until around 2015 or 2016, I had never heard anyone seriously propose that formal legalism was based. And not just because nobody was using the term based back then, but because we were all sort of libertarians at the time, implicitly. I mean, only Puritans embraced a bunch of rules. We were freedom-loving Americans, for goodness sake. It was the one thing everybody agreed on, rhetorically at least. But then the left started winning some crazy court cases where previously unnoticed rights, like the right for same-sex couples to marry, were discovered to have existed in the text of the Constitution all along. And at the same time, the reaction from the intellectual right was to focus on the rapid acceleration of, sort of moral absurdity, and to begin to advocate for such far-fetched remedies as, legalist, trad-cath, techno-imperium, or whatever. And a new consensus emerged. Now both left and right agreed that the law was the solution. The only disagreement was over which set of laws should completely and totally bind the behavior of human beings. Would it be draconian anti-racist laws or draconian anti-gay laws? Libertarianism and anarchism were out, and legalism was in.
I, Ishmael, was one of that crew. My shouts had gone up with the rest. My oath had been welded with theirs, and stronger I shouted, and more did I hammer and clinch my oath because of the dread in my soul.
That is to say, like so many, I was taken in by the impulse to regulate everything, to legislate away evil. I heard fellow streamers proclaiming that they had done so many bad things in their late adolescence because nobody ever told me not to. And now, to fix that problem, we need laws to tell the youths what is good and what is bad. We need to punish them when they do bad, at least. And very quickly, we had arrived not only at, ban porn, but even like ban yoga pants. The reactionary Christian Taliban was here to stay. But in my view, what's going on here is only like a half-conscious, knee-jerk response. I know that's hard to believe, and it feels like I'm pointing at you, but as I just said, it happened to me too. I mean, it's half-conscious though, I'm convinced now. Ishmael hints at the half-consciousness of it when he says that his oath went up with his fellow crewmen, quote, because of the dread in his soul, right? He was scared. He was disoriented. And therefore, he joined in their shouting. And as I tried to admit by citing that bit, it happened to me for a minute or so. I was not exempt. I also felt a certain amount of fear as the transvaluation of values happened right before my eyes in real time. And it was tempting to think that a reinstatement of draconian laws enforcing traditional morality might make things normal and familiar again. Okay, there's a somewhat subtle point made both in the Gospels and in Paul's letters that the law was given to increase sin, he says, or because of the stubbornness of the Hebrews, basically. Paul says in Romans 7, I would not have known what coveting really was if the law had not said, you shall not covet. Now that's an interesting and important idea, and I don't disagree with it. I never disagree with Paul, basically. We need to proclaim the true higher law best we can, so that people, especially young people, can square their consciences to it accordingly. But punishing them when they behave at variance from the law, that does not seem to be justified based on a Christian thinking, at least, in the case of the so-called sins of continence, for example. The case of the adulteress at the beginning of John 8 is so striking and was so controversial because while Jesus manages to free her from the punishment prescribed by the law, he nevertheless concludes by reinforcing the idea that she did do wrong, right? He says, "Go and sin no more." So who is right in all this? We have Solon, this very thoughtful legislator, even going so far, Plutarch notes, as to write his laws in verse form, presumably to make them both more memorable and more beautiful to the citizens. And on the other hand, we have this roughneck traveling philosopher, a Scythian, Anacharsis, claiming that laws only entrap the weak and insignificant, like a spider web, while allowing the rich and powerful to shred them whenever necessary. Part of the confusion in all of this is that there are so many different kinds of laws, right? There are social laws and laws for individuals. There are ritual laws and rules of thumb for maintaining health, for example. There are internal laws that are intended to benefit us, and then there are universal laws that are thought to be for everyone. Questioning kosher food restrictions is categorically different from questioning proposed laws against immodest clothing or child abuse or speeding or whatever. Another problem is that many legal systems establish such authority for themselves that they do not invite queries about the rightness or wrongness of the edicts, yet we clearly live in a deconstructed age when all things are questionable. For better or worse, that is the situation, right? So, or at least among us, in the internet that we're in. Anyway, this weekend I was looking again with some guys at the Euthyphro dialogue of Plato, and there's that famous question in there about whether the pious is pious because God loves it, or whether God loves it because it is pious. This is a classic question, and it's kind of unresolvable. It's a question that probably seems very natural and intuitive to many of you. We hear about an edict banning the consumption of pork, for example. And we begin deconstructing it right away. We go, who said so? How did he know? Why should we believe him? What reason was given? And so on. But try to imagine growing up in a civilization where pork wasn't eaten ever by anyone you know. And that's that. It may never occur to you in such a situation to question such an edict at all. And if you do question it, the answer is likely to be, Moses said so. And that's it. That ought to satisfy your curiosity. But in practice, in reality, cosmopolitan life, which is what we're all immersed in, for better or worse, if you're on the internet, that's you. This brings people to the edge, and even across the edge, to where these sorts of unthinkable questions become thinkable. And then they become unavoidable. They become second nature. So in our civilization, all laws are questionable. And the only defense for any law becomes a sort of secular scientific pragmatism. So you might question why we all drive on the right side of the road, but some social engineer can give you an explanation that there's really no reason left to question it after you've heard his explanation. And this is how we get into the territory where there are not only seatbelt laws, but also helmet laws and vaccine laws and all sorts of zoning laws, and basically the entire bureaucratic order grows up around this hermeneutic. But what about a proposed law against yoga pants? Is there an engineer who can make a dry and direct case against them that is so clear and sensible that no one would question it? Or for, how a marriage should be restricted, if at all, right? Well, the truth is, of course not. It's easy to muddy these waters. But does this mean I'm saying wearing yoga pants is good or same-sex marriage is good? No, I'm not. But am I saying that it shouldn't be discouraged? I'm not even saying that. But any attempt to establish a law against these kinds of things, against yoga pants, for example, is going to be unenforceable, in part because we are a civilization that questions. Do you understand that? That is what we are. That is the nature. If there's any nature of Western civilization, it is that we are the questioners, okay? That's what we are. That's what you are. If identitarianism ever meant anything, you're the questioning people. Now, if you don't want to be that, or if you think that I'm wrong and that there was some other culture where a bunch of peasants just followed rules and didn't have imaginations, well, we're on different tracks. Like, you can go that way. I'm not interested in going that way. But what I think is we're the dialectic civilization. We're the questioning question civilization, right? And the only way to effectively ban, yoga pants and ban porn and ban adultery and ban masturbation and ban Lizzo's music videos is to make a society that doesn't question things and then just, rule against all those things, and no one knows how to question anything. They just accept the rules that are sort of given to them. This is what I'm trying to say. In that story of Billy Budd, which again, I may try to do a whole episode on, but it's like, it's a big chore because it's such a good story and it's only like 70 pages long. And it's got a huge vocabulary. If you like literature and great, like, dense, difficult writing about high themes of philosophy, Billy Budd sticks. I mean, I don't know, man. It was the story that basically got me into literature. Someday I'll tell you that story, maybe as I'm showing you the bookshelf. I was going to do a bookshelf episode soon based on Nathan Rodriguez's suggestion. Anyway, in that story of Billy Budd, here's the gist of it. It's wartime, and we're on the military ship. So there's a strict hierarchy. There's a captain. Below him in rank, there's a master at arms, and below the master at arms, there's a common sailor, Billy Budd. Now, Billy is and this is sort of the source of the problem. Billy is a natural aristocrat with good looks, charm, blonde hair, much charisma. Okay. But the master at arms, who ranks above him, is sort of this troll-looking short guy with like a bad attitude. Now, probably because of that discrepancy or contradiction, the master at arms is envious, okay, or just spiteful or something. And for kind of no reason at all, or maybe because of that, he takes to hating Billy. Like, again, for no reason at all. And again, for no reason at all, the master at arms starts bossing Billy around, making him, do chores, clean up the deck when it's not his chore, for example, and basically abusing his higher position. Now, it turns out Billy has one fatal flaw. He's a stutterer, and it gets severe when he gets flustered. So one day, the master at arms surprises Billy by falsely accusing him right in front of the captain of conspiracy to mutiny. And of course, it's a most serious charge. We're in wartime, right? And Billy starts stammering, stuttering. He starts fuming, turning red. He can't speak. So in an impulsive rage, he lashes out against his persecutor, punches the master at arms in the forehead, and knocks him out with a single blow. The master at arms falls backward like a log and splits his head on the ground and actually dies. Now again, it's wartime, so nothing is more serious than, the laws during wartime, right? And the laws say that a man who kills a fellow soldier is to be hanged at dawn the next day. The law is clear. The captain saw the violent act from 3 feet away. Now, in a brief investigation, he discovers that Billy was not leading a mutiny, that the master at arms provoked Billy, but still, the law says what it says. Billy, who is clearly the archetype of innocence, must die, because the law must live. That's the way the story goes. And so, in a scene that echoes of the crucifixion of Jesus at the hands of the legalist Pharisees and legalist Romans, Billy is hanged at dawn the next day, just as the law requires. And what of Billy? Well, Billy, like Jesus, is one of those weak and insignificant people mentioned by Anacharsis to Solon who get caught in the web. And that's all. Just like John 18:14 says, Caiaphas was one who had advised the Jews that it would be better if one man died for the people. And that's all, folks. That's all. I mean, I listen to the trad people railing against degeneracy, and they want all the laws. They are begging for a strongman tyrant. The law will save us, is their implicit refrain. I hear them hollering it. They're with Caiaphas. They seem to be the people who know that, every so often the law kind of gets it wrong, and innocent will have to die so that the law can live. Long live the law. And just, by the way, to hell with Galatians 2:21, right? If, quote, if righteousness could be gained through the law, then Christ died for nothing. I mean, that's not even true, right? Christ didn't die for nothing, the way these people, the legalists, see it. He died so that the law may live. This is crazy talk. I mean, never mind that the law can be changed and made clownish at any moment. Never mind that judges and jurors can, get the evidence wrong and reach wrong decisions. Never mind that judges, are notorious for wrongly interpreting the law. And never mind that men are, in some fundamental way, the descendants of Adam, the inheritors of his sin impulse, truly wired to do wrong, even when they know what the right thing to do is. Never mind all that, though. Rather than repent and stop sinning, let's ban yoga pants and return to the time when women weren't allowed outside the house with a male relative escorting them. Let's go farther, you guys. You hate sex so much. We need to burn all the paintings. Savonarola was right. Those nudes make us horny. Meanwhile, some of you who aren't obsessed with, petty, baby-level, second circle of hell sins like masturbating, might almost remember a time when we all kind of agreed about what was actually ruining our civilization. Remember wildly unchecked immigration? Remember the fact that we are ruled by bankers and Hollywood and none of them are Christians? Remember they're all hiding the good books from our children in the school curriculum and teaching them to doubt their own good instincts? But no, the war on yoga pants must continue. Renaissance painting is pornographic. I mean, what about the stolen election, right? Guys, we got to pay attention to transsexual children's reading hour, sluts on TikTok, China is bad. The COVID-19 Kappa variant. Black Lives Matter is burning our cities and looting. We got to do something about the gay flag everywhere. My church won't let us take our masks off and they're forcing vaccinations. Yeah, there's lots of things to get distracted by and we can chase it. We can chase it. Do you understand? We're always one step behind. We always have to pass a law after the problem emerges and just pile up these laws to try to, it's like sticking the fingers in the holes in the dam, and so on and so on. All we need, I'm being sarcastic, is a philosopher, king, Cathalo, trad, warlord, prince of light, and that'll make everything better. He'll just pass a bunch of based laws and then nobody will, jerk off anymore. And the frog avatar guys will be given girlfriends. And utopia will finally arrive. Today, my daughter got caught, my 11-year-old, got caught stealing a little box of Altoids from my mom, who had picked the kids up and taken them for a sleepover. So her grandma. And she just snuck it from the compartment in between the two front seats. And my mom even asked her on the way home, where'd my Altoids go? And she just lied and said, no, I don't know. And then we found them. And we were like, did you take these? And she's like, no, Ella gave them to me or something. And it's man, I don't know, but that kind of behavior, it's like, first of all, obviously it's like a violation of the Ten Commandments. You know what I mean? Like, there are laws against this. Stealing is but what I'm saying is that behavior, she knows it's wrong. It's going to persist until she decides to do right. That's the limitation that I'm trying to point out here. It's not to say we shouldn't have laws. Sure, we can have laws against murder. We could even have laws against like yoga pants if you want or something. I'm not trying to like stand in your way and be a libertarian anarchist necessarily. I'm just trying to point out that there are some like endemic and perennial problems that will not be resolved, and that you have to keep your eye on the ball. Like, where do we want our real focus to be? And it's my impression that there was this kind of attempt to muddy the waters and confuse us about what we're really trying to do here, which is to like reacquire our own civilization from international capitalists who just want to turn it into, a global, like a mall, basically, a giant strip mall, And so they like introduced all these little petty concerns, and we bought it. Like we got the hook in the mouth, Yeah, oh yeah, we need to like stick it to the women who are acting like sluts or something. It's like, yeah, I mean, kind of, but it's not the top priority, actually. I don't know. I guess this is just my opinion maybe lately, but I'm I'm challenging the legalists anyway, and I challenge you to read Galatians if you're a Christian and see if you still, want to just pass all the laws and put all your faith in the law. Lastly, to return to my first image there, the thing about the bear who goes hunting for salamanders. Think about how it is that this bear knows not to eat certain poisonous salamanders. Bears don't talk. They don't have a written code. How are they doing this, right? How are they not dying by accidentally eating poisonous salamanders sometimes? It's an analogy. I'm not saying that the bears have the Holy Spirit or something, but I am saying that bears in this case seem to be operating according to something that is pre-rational, that is nonverbal, that is instinctual, and that like there's a way that we could also tap into that without being guided at every moment by the laws. So go back to Hebrews 5:11 through 14, and the suggestion here is to stop always begging for milk. Stop asking for the law to tell you to do this, that, and the next at every turn in your life, Instead, like, learn to, what does he say? And like, discriminate, to judge, to evaluate, to sort, to distinguish good from evil by constantly practicing. And that means not being told what to do. Don't run your life according to these algorithms that we call laws, but like become a free man. That's what I'm saying. And I want to live in a civilization where a certain amount of freedom is retained, like not just as, a meme. I know that it's been like really popular to make fun of freedom since, 2016 or something. But I feel like we got psyoped, man, and I'm trying to return some degree of that to reality. The other idea here, and I can't remember where I saw this week, but it's like, the other reason that's so important to me is that technically speaking, like philosophically, technically speaking, you are not making positive moral progress in your life. And you're not even making moral choices if you don't have agency, if you don't have moral freedom. So where you can't choose to do wrong, you aren't doing right. You're just following the law. When a sheep, stays in the pack because the sheepdog barks him back into line, that sheep remains an animal, right? Like it's a farm animal. And to the extent that you want to live your life according to like the prescriptions of laws at every turn, and you want laws to check the bad behaviors of everyone in our society, I don't know, man. I really am kind of returning to some amount of, look, like, and again, sure, you need like driving laws, and you need laws about, I don't know, like financial contracts, and you need probably like, like there's all kinds of laws that we need. But I'm saying that, like, when it comes to these things that we have called degeneracy and stuff, a lot of this was present in 1620 and 1420 and 700 and at the time of Jesus and before, and it really doesn't go away. Like, it's part of our human nature. And to say that, like, oh, you know, well, your daughter was stealing Altoids this morning, therefore we need draconian anti-thievery laws or something. It's like, I don't know, man. I kind of think she's going to learn, the conscience is going to come online, and she is going to ultimately end up being a better person for the mistake that she made this morning. Anyway, that's the Godward podcast. I hope it's been provocative to you. I welcome your comments. I really do. I read every comment. I will always reply if you say something interesting, and I suppose it helps the algorithm. Again, by the way, if you want to join the Patreon thing, there's a link in the description. It's pretty cheap. You could even just do it for a month and watch all the backlog episodes of the secret streams that we do. They're really good conversations. It's hard to do this, just monologuing according to a script as effectively as we do the back and forth. The back and forth thing in the secret streams involves up to like 6 guys telling funny stories and arguing about stuff, and it's pretty fun. It's starting to feel like a men's club. There's chatter of starting a business or just, I don't know, but it's been a lot of fun, and I guess I am shilling a little bit for that. And, I'm also looking for a job freelancing. If anybody wants to hire me to do some writing, maybe I'll do it for you if you have the prices right. Okay, thanks for listening, you guys. See you next time on The Godward Show.